Looking for a cosmic adventure like no other? Zatswan, Multiversal Guardian is a high-stakes comic book journey through the multiverse with stunning art and an unforgettable hero. Get your copy today in ebook and paperback formats. Link in the description.
Hello everyone, this is Neil Allen, the writer of this graphic novel right here, Zatswan Multiversal Guardian. You can purchase it on Amazon in the link in the description. If you have, you could get it in either ebook or paperback. And if you have Kindle Unlimited, you could essentially just get it for free. And today I wanted to continue some of the discussion I was having with a viewer. We were talking about Captain Marvel and why the relationship between Captain Marvel and War Machine was so a big nothing burger despite having 10 years to do something. And I basically explained that the reason why is because of lack of interest. And Long-Legged Mac Daddy, who I was discussing with, replied to that comment. And let's see how this discussion is going. They say, hey, thanks for replying to my comment. I didn't know a writer on the Captain Marvel stories was so unenthusiastic about their relationship. But it makes a ton of sense on why what should be a layup of a relationship has been done so poorly over the years. It's interesting how comic book writers can basically just say, let me interject here. We're talking about a quote I read that Kelly Thompson made, where you could definitely infer that it just showed she was uninterested in developing the Carol and Rhodey relationship. But let's go on with what Long-Legged Mac Daddy is saying. It's interesting how comic book writers can basically just say, this person is in a relationship, yeah, I'm basically ignoring that. And there isn't anyone higher up tapping them on the shoulder and telling them that they're not going to ignore a relationship just because they had preferred to see the character with someone else. That's madness to me. And I'm definitely going to check your book out. It's obvious that you put a lot of love and thought into it. Well, thank you. Please do, if you haven't gotten it already, Zatswan Multiversal Guardian. Yes, and that is actually at the crux of what we're going to be talking about today. Like why there seems to be no love, no forethought, and like less and less creativity like put into Marvel and DC comics. If I look a little tired today, I think I didn't get enough sleep last night, but I'm gonna soldier through this. Maybe I'll take a nap later on in the day. But yeah, so why doesn't an editor come in and say, hey, to like in a hypothetical situation, Kelly Thompson, I see that you're not that enthusiastic about the relationship with Rhodey and Carol, but still, like, we want that relationship and we're hiring you to, like, develop it further. Um, like, why didn't an editor come in and say that and just let a writer like Kelly Thompson, who has no interest in War Machine and Captain Marvel's relationship, just not develop it? Well, the answer to that, I think, is fairly simple. It's because the editors themselves would have to care, and the editors themselves do not care. And so the reason why Marvel and DC, I think, are in such dire straits, like creatively and even financially in many cases, is because of this air of people essentially not caring. And the thing about it is, like, that is a bad situation and it makes for a lot of bad comics, but I honestly can't even blame the people like in the situation they're in for not caring, because the situation these days in 2025 when I'm making this, it's not at all like what it was in 1980, 1983, 1984, 1988, when we were getting all these legendary comics from legendary people like Jim Shooter and John Byrne and Frank Miller and all these like legendary creators, George Perez, like, why isn't it like that now? And the big reason I would say more than anything is because people do not care enough. And I would say that we have to get into the reasons why that is the case. Why do people not care enough? It's because business models have changed enough to where, like, there are various opportunities for people, and the companies haven't really countered those well enough. And in this new ecosystem, this is the key word we're coming down to. Editor from everybody involved except for maybe the highest level executives, but probably not even them. I would say you have a gigantic um, culture of nobody being incentivized enough to really care enough to do a good job. So I want to get back to the core thing that I was discussing with Long Leg Mac Daddy. These people, they just don't care enough. Somebody came up with just the, it seems to me, I am speculating to an extent here, but it's not a far out speculation because we have the actual end result to examine and look at. 10 years of Captain Marvel and War Machine being in a relationship and basically nothing coming of that. How does something like that happen? Somebody came up with the just the idea of putting Carol with Rhodey, and I don't know why they did it. Apparently not, there wasn't much thought put behind it, it seems to me. Maybe they thought they would win further, woke points or something like that by putting, you know, this blonde white lady in an interracial relationship. Maybe that was their real goal, to virtue signal or to kind of have the veneer of being progressive or something like that. But then you find out, like with a lot of virtue signaling, there's really nothing behind it. It's just kind of so people can pat themselves on the back. So maybe that's why they did it. But the key thing is that they did it for some reason, but there was not enough forethought put into it of like, well, where are we going to take this? What's it going to look like in a couple years? What are we going to do with these characters? I don't think anybody cared to plan that out. So we get quotes like what I read from Kelly Thompson in my other video about Captain Marvel and War Machine. Well, it was a low drama relationship that I guess it made sense for them to be together. And I kind of kept it around because it was low drama. I wouldn't have to focus on it. And it can just be existing in the background. Um, we get quotes like that kind of feel dismissive. Like, oh, you don't care. So if you're a person who, say, let's say with Zatswan, for whatever your reasons, let's say maybe you actually value seeing interracial relationships, in media, in comics or whatnot, and you see that, Carol Danvers and um, Rhodey, and you might get excited about that. Maybe there's something worthwhile behind this, or maybe you just like to see, one of the black characters doing something, displaying some humanity, seeming important, like being in a relationship with this character, Captain Marvel. They're really, Marvel's attempting to push to the stars, and you think, oh, okay, well, that looks interesting. Like, well, let's see what they do with this. And then you find out, well, really, they do nothing. So, yeah, it's like you have the veneer of something there, maybe so some people could pat themselves on the back, but ultimately, it's like a bag of chips, like a big bag of chips, and you find out maybe 80% of it actually is air. Maybe even more than that, maybe 90%. There's nothing in there. You're not getting the value that you thought you initially would. And, I see that with a lot of black characters whenever these companies act like they're going to do something with them. Another great example is Cyborg during the New 52 had the veneer like they were going to do something with him, but in a similar situation, they didn't have anything for him. They didn't plan any of this out. They just, oh, in that instance, I don't think it was necessarily patting themselves on the back like it may have been with Captain Marvel and War Machine. I think it was more so like covering their bases. Okay, now it's expected of us to have some diversity on the Justice League after the 2000s cartoon show. So I guess we got to put some black character on here. It to me it read a bit more like that. But why is nobody caring? Let me get to that point again. Why is nobody incentivized? Well, see, back in those old days, like in the Jim Shooter days and in the Chris Claremont days and the Walt Simonson days and all of this stuff, the people back then really didn't have nearly as much opportunity as we have now. Working at DC and Marvel, that was the thing to do, and because they were incentivized and because of not as many like really credible or worthwhile options, I think they were doing their best. You know, you hear people like Jim Shooter talk, and you can definitely tell that he cared and he was doing his best. Um, like regardless of what some people think about his interpersonal skills, he put numbers up on the scoreboard, you know what I mean? And he cared, you know, about that business. And but the thing about it is, this kind of gets back to it. Look what he got for caring about that business. He was trying to get people like health care, trying to get them better pay, getting their artwork like returned to them, getting them these benefits. And essentially, how did that business repay him? They gave him the boot. And then, you know, his subordinates like celebrated it. So that's kind of what comics is like. Like, how did it repay these people like Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby, who created like the most popular, and even um, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. Uh, what? How did it repay them for putting their best ideas forward? Essentially, they all got screwed over. So now there's this precedent in comics where you don't want to be the Jack Kirby. Weirdly enough, as influential as a Jack Kirby is, and as influential as an Alan Moore is, you don't. The precedent's now there. You don't want to be the Jack Kirby. You don't want to be the Alan Moore. You don't want to be the Steve Ditko. So if you go in there caring, you don't even want to be the Jim Shooter, really. Like, you go in there caring, putting your best work forward, you're not incentivized to do that because that business is ultimately going to screw you over. If you want to use the term screw you over, I'm using that a bit loosely because essentially these people, especially the work for hire people, they signed contracts. They kind of knew what they were getting themselves into, or at least they should have known what they were getting themselves into. But regardless, they were incentivized, at least at the time they felt, to do their best work. But probably, obviously, in all of those cases, they had kind of a different view when the corporation goes on to make millions and millions and billions of dollars off their work, and they're like in the poorhouse. You know, that's really gonna get somebody to think. So there are a couple things here. The creator is not incentivized to do their best work because nowadays we have a lot of other opportunities, a lot of other venues to get our work out there. Like I said, back in those old days, in the 30s all the way up to the 80s and so on, and into the yeah, I think that's fair. Marvel and DC like were the places to be, and you didn't have a lot of other opportunities to like get your ideas out there, and the creators were incentivized, so they felt, to do their best work, to build their name, build their profile, and they feel that way until they end up, they see this corporation's making their best work is making the corporation millions of dollars, and they're not seeing enough of that. Um, and then as far as being the actual employees, like how Jim Shooter was with these editors, they're not incentivized because for a couple reasons. Like these days they're not paid enough to care. Like they're, I think, overworked juggling all these different books, being paid very, you know, not a lot for what they're doing. And, I probably their main focus is just getting the books out on the market. The quality, I they're definitely not sitting around thinking about this stuff seriously, um, and where it's going to take them in 5 years. I think they might try to do that, but they get quickly veered off track, like maybe 6 months, a year into it, or something like that, and then it's a totally different scenario. And another thing too, then there's a Jim Shooter example. These corporations will chew you up and spit you out. You go in there doing your best work, and you really try hard to turn things around, like Jim Shooter was. Whatever the circumstances were, it chewed him up and it spat him out. So I think a lot of these big guys on top, like Jim Lee, okay, so Jim Shooter was trying to really turn things around, help out all these creators and stuff like that. I think nowadays they're probably just coast. Coast, don't cause too much of a stir, don't disrupt the system too much, don't take too many risks. Just the parent companies are fine enough with the companies doing, this much. Don't rock that boat. Just keep, getting your salary and, you know, cashing your checks, and there you go. So I think all of this has um, culminated into creating a situation where these comics, nobody cares enough to really make them good. Um, and for better or worse, like, I'm kind of indifferent on it. How do you turn something like that around? Really, how do you turn it around? The creators have so many other opportunities to do things. I'm just a person here working, and I was able to put out my book Zatswan, and you can go buy it if you want. It's not like you could only get it in a comic shop in my area, or, how's anybody going to hear about me? Now I could just get up in front of the whole world and, oh, here's a book for you. Does this look interesting? Well, you can buy it and have it delivered to your house in a day. Um, or you can get it digitally and read it right away. So, I mean, the model has just changed so much to where creators, like, they don't have to put up with getting screwed by these corporations. So in many cases they don't, like, they're not incentivized to do their very best work over there. So in many cases they don't. Um, the editors are paid so little, as it seems to me. They're not incentivized to do their best work, and it's not easy for them to do, their best work when they're burdened the way they are for getting, the little amount that they're getting. So they're not incentivized to do their best work. When you go higher up the chain, the big executives probably aren't incentivized to do their best work. As long as they get their salary, it's probably not in their interest to risk disrupting things too much. If, like, Warner Bros. Or Disney is happy enough, with what they're doing, like, why am I going to try to do something, take a risk to, like, really inject a lot of life into this industry when that can work against me, and next thing I know, I'm not getting the salary anymore. So, you wind up with a lot of boring comics and no foresight and people not caring. And I think getting all the way back to the original point, Captain Marvel and Rhodey is just another manifestation of all of that. People not really caring, not really thinking things through. If they think things through, they don't stick to their plans. Reboots happening all the time, and eventually the original intent gets lost in all the reshuffling of these people. And so you end up with this situation that we have now at Marvel and DC, to where a lot of people feel this isn't even worth reading anymore because no continuity, overall, like, feeling that nobody's really caring much. The stuff you're reading, that the you know, it doesn't feel like it matters because all these reboots keep happening. And you get these instances where characters, they'll start something but they don't go anywhere in 10 years, like Captain Marvel and War Machine. And that's the situation. Like, will this turn around? I don't know. I don't see that happening for the foreseeable future, at least. I think comic books are kind of moving past them, rather than DC and Marvel, like, being the real industry standard, and being, where everyone aspires to be and what everyone aspires to be like. I actually think that the medium of comics are actually moving past them, and that's something that they should be concerned about. Myself, I actually feel kind of neutral. It's like, I don't wish them any ill, like some of these YouTubers seem to, but at the same time, it's like, you know, comic creators and comic readers have other options, like, for instance, Zatswan, that people can check out. The medium of comics will be fine. Um, but anyway, this is a pretty. It was a deeper topic, I think, than it seemed on the surface. So this was a pretty big one. Be sure to check out Zatswan on Amazon. Like I said, like and subscribe. That helps this channel tremendously, and it's not too big of an ask. And please take part in the discussion below. I would like to keep the discussion going on, and we can talk more about it later. And until next time, again, this is Neil Allen, and I'll see you soon.